Welcome to Coastside Poetry. Thanks to those of you who've zoomed in. It's great to see all of you, and those of you who are watching on YouTube as well. We meet virtually on the second Tuesday of every month to celebrate spoken poetry. I'm Deborah Bockel-Schmidt, and Steve Long and I are your hosts this evening. Our featured poet event is being recorded and streamed live onto YouTube as we speak. So anyone can look at it later. We'll be posting the link on our website. This evening, we welcome Dan Williams. Welcome, Dan. Dan is a California regional poet of the Sierra Nevada mountains in Northern California and has poems sequestered in Yosemite's time capsule. He's also a member of Poets and Writers in New York, the Chaparral Poets of California, the Ina Coolbrith Circle, and has poems in many journals and anthologies. He has published 4 poetry chapbooks with Moonstone Press in Philadelphia, and is the recent recipient of the Robinson and Una Jeffers Tor House Poetry Prize for 2023 for his poem, Song of the Sangre de Cristo. A member of Mariposa County's Historical Society. He also has a poem in Lee Herrick's Our California online anthology representing Mariposa County. Dan is currently at work on a longer collection of poetry, which will be called A Williams Sampler, and will be out this winter. Please welcome Dan.
Well, thank you so much, Deborah. Thank you, Steve and Diane, for giving us this opportunity. Thank you, all you poets, for joining in and coming together so that we can all raise our voices in honor of poetry. You might remember that in the 60s, there was a fellow by the name of Joseph Campbell, who was a philosophy teacher, I believe, at Berkeley. And Joseph, when I was finished with school, I was wondering what I was going to do with myself. And he kind of convinced me that I should follow my passion, whatever that passion might be. And I said, well, Joseph, what about a job? What about a place to live? All that sort of stuff. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. Because if you're following your passion, that's going to all drop into place. So I immediately left San Jose and I went to a little town called Arnold in Calaveras County. And I settled in there and began to get the place down on paper. That was my idea, to go to the Sierra Nevada and to find that place and to explore that place and to write down all these things that many people might not see or might miss. Hopefully someday to publish a group of poems. Well, over 40 years, I went through Calaveras, Tuolumne, and the county I'm in now, and Mariposa County. And I'm just kind of flabbergasted by the amount of material I've had over those years. Tonight, I'd like to share a few of those poetic moments with you. And I'm calling it the Sierra Nevada Mountains, Realities and Imaginings. Because it seems to me that every poem, well, for instance, my favorite poems are, for instance, Dylan Thomas's Fern Hill, Keats' Eve of St. Agnes, and those kinds of poems are strong narrative poems, and I love that kind of poetry. Also, early explorers of the Sierra region in poetry, one was called Joaquin Miller, who lived in the Bay Area and would spend lots of time. Also, of course, very famous Gary Snyder, who also did the same thing. And so I decided that I was going to maybe go down the trail of the greats and see what I could find out. At least I would enjoy myself while I was doing it. In 1964, the Wilderness Act was passed, and since that time, there are 800 wilderness areas in the United States. But you don't have to go to a wilderness area as a poet. You can go to your garden, you can go to your block, your city park, your state park, whatever it is. But I would encourage you then to claim that place, to absorb that place and let that place absorb you, and then give it voice, give that place voice. That's a very worthwhile thing to do if you're a poet. So without further ado, I think I'll get started here. First poem is Brief history of the Mother Lode. Mother Lode, of course, being the Mother Lode of gold during 1849 that followed roughly Highway 49 all the way through the Sierra. Brief history of the Mother Lode. They chopped the black oak, built a post office, paved parking, then extended it all the way out to a street. Howl cried 2 times. An old cemetery. I'm startled to find the grave of one born on my birthday who died just 4 months later, and I in my 40th year. You that regain too soon a return to that darkness know as much about consciousness as I. Except for these rare golden birds. These birds I've seen forming coronas in the air. They flare into fans, burst into shards, drop fluttering into my dreams. Unlike you who went too soon, I constantly fear that day when I must leave them and be content to follow. While driving through the little mountain community of Mountain Ranch in Calaveras, one day I saw a very modest modular home sitting on a hillside that was covered with manzanita. And there was an old beater of a wood truck sitting there next to a black oak tree and a little boy sitting in it. It was about 7, 8 years old. And he was just sitting there looking up towards the manzanita behind the trailer. I didn't think much about it until, a couple of weeks later, while I sat down to write, this happened. Father's truck. I used to meet my father's truck under the black oak near the woodshed. His old green Chevy slouched to a stop near my feet, lifting me with raw-scarred hands, his Mackinac oily, and with whiskey sour breath, he'd tell me his view of paradise. Boy, I'd like to see that old truck there loaded with ants tumble into the Stanislaus. And if I'd my druthers, them ants could tuck a yeller jack under each arm. Then we'd laugh, he in the house of mother's wrath, and I into the truck bed, where I'd sit on splintered boards, happy in the pungency of gasoline, of burnt oil, of cedar bark and bear clover. While in the house, voices rose and fell like fire crowns in white fur, I sat singing, as mountain quail sometimes sit, lonely in green manzanita. One of the first things I enjoyed doing when I first arrived in Yosemite was attend some of the ceremonials of the Paiute Miwok people that still live here. They've been here for millennia. And they have a roundhouse in the village. And every year they do something called the bear ceremony, the bear dance. And it's to celebrate the return of the bear from its torpor into the world, bringing with it power and medicine and light. I got to watch that ceremonial one time. And then later on, I was looking at some cobbles, some granite cobbles that were built into the wall of the Iranian Hotel. And well, this happened, cold ceremonial. I reach out to touch these rough rhomboid stones, base stones to massive columns, pinning Awani to the earth, gray and white, cobbled with crystals, coarse as rock salt. Someone wonders what I'm doing there, bent in filtered light, stroking mortared granite chunks. I shall explain, I'm listening with my fingertips, foot drum pounding in rhythm with my own plangent heart, hearing the still quiet thump of Miwok tribesmen, ecstatic, dancing in this cold ceremony. When it comes to granite, Yosemite has some of the hardest granite in the world. We're very soft, and Yosemite is very, very hard, as I found out recently. But I looked at the granite and I thought, well, what about fluency? What if there was some kind of fluency that could go on inside that framework of that granite? And so this is called granite hawks. Whatever this is, it certainly won't fade as a meteor's death, unless with comet purpose, it explodes itself into granite riprap below. Perhaps that stone is frozen flight, metallic as 1,000 hawks, their power poised and balanced, circling eternally an ice-scoured rock. Easy enough as crystalline cage, terminus through which a smashing bird may join the flight of its sisters and brothers. Easy enough as a wing slices air, wafting these walls above the plain, such simple grace within their bond, forgetting all they knew of pain, carrying earth through heaven. I thought I should include a autumn poem, that being this time of the year for it, but even though it doesn't seem to feel like it right now. Poem for the third day of fall. First day, we prayed to our favorite gods, giving thanks for even the sparsest rain. Oh, how short it was. Second day, we prayed for a snow blizzard, especially over our high country icebox, much needed frozen cornices and deep drifts. Third day, we wondered where it all went. Gray Conestogas, dark with water, made their way up Oregon Trail slipstreams in the sky. Instead, so many immigrants came to our aid, losing their way, teasing us with moisture deferred. The number 3 caps whatever 1 and 2 begins, a prime number divisible only by itself. It stands alone between what has occurred and what comes next. There is no way to know what 4 and 5 will bring, but day 6 will bring twice what 3 brought, be it gloriously brilliant leaves or dripping boughs. A live oak stand never loses leaves, looking through the window at vertical trunks wearing their only claim to autumn, gray scabs of dry moss, now a green plush, all the way up the trunks to higher branches. Grove keeper gray squirrel can now dig tiny paws into it and scurry straight up, happy in this newly grasped attainment, a creature found in the moment, for whom numbers 1 through 6 have absolutely no meaning whatsoever. This is an item I found in the Yosemite Research Library. A young Irish soldier dove into the water below Yosemite Falls to rescue a young girl who had fallen in. His name was Private Yeats. Private Yeats, August 2nd, 1905, drowned in Yosemite Creek below the falls, attempting to save a young girl falling into the water. At first thought I, 'twas a panther scream, her voice tugging me into the whirling water, a willowy dream of cottonwoods, weedy arms flailing between bouldered banks. Where came so much water? Was it my eyes or hers? Every bit of it slicing through and freezing, silvered and swift as hawk's wings. But for this crushing rush, I willed us both alive to land. Her hair blonde and long streaming, the last I remember, floated out, caressed my lips. Only that, and what the light was like. At first, all brilliant and clashing, then golden green and forceful, then silently tunneled. Then I and my delicate wife-child folded into darkness. This poem was written last week. Breakfast. A slice of bread slid into its toaster slot to be greeted warmly by glowing filament. Out the window, I saw a raven pecking at the furry corpse of a chicory. and enjoying its breakfast in my driveway. Then a Cooper's hawk back winged down. The raven, who protested but knew better than stand up to the steel-sharp talons screaming in its direction, managed a squawk of protest as it fled. As for the hawk, arrows or bullets may pierce its feathers, but squawks will never harm it. Unconcerned, it held its breakfast delicately, glancing about, watching for other predators to pop up like my toast had. I turned away, buttering, sprinkling cinnamon. I glanced outside once more. Both my hungry hawk and his breakfast had flown. Coyote Hollow Ranch. All the bracken and fern have gone that once filled this back-filled hollow, with ancient silences forever silenced by a diesel throat's warbling 60,000 cubic yards. A place in treeless midnight now, gray as the worn coyote's pelt, haphazardly hung on the skeletal boards of a barn. Just prior to the Winchester shot, its fine nose tested the air, and with drooped plumed tail, it softly patted its leaf-strewn land. Fresh holes now blow in ranch yard paving as though torn by a wind that hums each rusting hulk. Now the barn also is gone. A 4-lane hisses nearby, like the guiltless bullet, still unspent. I make a deer. I make a deer to run on the wind, to dissolve in a mist among hunters. A deer to go underground October, November, to graze from below pale mauve roots of meadow grasses. I make a deer whose antlers ravish plywood cabins, whose hooves turn asphalt into furrow. I make a deer to browse Coors cans, Pampers, Doritos bags, whose scat breeds Ceanothus, Manzanita, Penstemon. I make a deer whose massive lungs work, turning fossil fuel effluvia into oxygen, pure and clear. I make a deer that sniffs to find and pierce the heart of realtors, can lick itching scale from their eyes. A deer whose doe lactates, though traumatized by guns, dogs, and cars, with fawns that play with plate steel. Avid and wishful, and with careful hands, I make a deer to cover our earth in a delicate gauze of brown velvet, then rub and reveal the fresh-born bone of humanity beneath. Pitkit Dizet is a small plant that grows all over the hillsides. It's got a very pungent aroma, those of you who are aware of it, and it has a little white strawberry flower, like strawberry flowers on it. And it's like gasoline when there's a fire. It goes up, it's the very base of the crowning fire. It flashes up and lights the lower branches, and then up it goes. Kitkit Dizet. That's, by the way, a Miwok word for it. A goddess long dead with long ashen tresses desires to rise again in resinous white flowers along deer trails. Over hillsides, the pungent Kitkit Dizet, down escarpments, ravines, through miniature red forests, lost in gray pines, to where a gut-shot deer, eluding the dogs of its pursuers, has attempted to slake its terrible thirst in the Stanislaus, to where it has leaned out upon the fallen bulk of a sky-blasted pine, half ashore, armwood shot upward. The buck's swollen tongue distended strains for cool moisture, in green shallows, rusts downstream current with his blood. Its neck outstretched, just inches short of quenching water, light has left it a fly-blown baggage, leaning in red froth. Is this not a sacred place, incensed with kit-kit-pizé, where water mixed with blood flows westward down to sea? Where Earth's heart keeps turning, beating? Where the sun's blood, gone suddenly chill, spreads quietly through the trees? An indicator species is a kind of creature that one can watch to see whether global warming is having an effect on it. The extension being that whatever effect it's having on the indicator species indicates what effect global warming may be having on us as well. Indicator species. Cholok rested under black oaks. It was now up to others to drive deer in his direction. The time of falling water, and the sun felt good. A big black bee with pale stripes landed briefly on his arm, its legs buttoned with brilliant gold packets of pollen. Cholok felt sleepy watching the bee, knowing he would not be stung. From the deep woods beyond the meadow, growl of the grizzly, song of the nuthatch, skirl of the hawk. Daniel rested on his back on granite bedrock beneath ancient black oaks. In the hazy distance, the silent ribbon of Chilnawalna Falls. A small black bee with pale stripes landed briefly on his arm, its legs dotted with poppy packets of pollen. Daniel felt sleepy watching the bee, knowing he would not be stung. From the young woods on an ancient meadow, song of the nuthatch, skirl of the hawk. Somewhere, and pretty soon, no one rested on bald bedrock. A tiny black bee dropped from the flat iron sky to shrivel on stone. Its legs never knew the beautiful weight of pollen. Its eyes blinded at birth by a pitiless sun, a terrible, huge golden bloom that stung him. On the dust-laden bedrock, where once stood trees and grass, silent swirls of solar wind. I used to go jogging when I was much younger in the morning, and there was a couple of acres of sunflowers that I would jog past. And it was fun to watch because every morning they would be facing toward the east. And then after work in the afternoon, I would jog by and they would be all facing to the west. I think that's called being heliotropic. But anyhow, I saw it as a form of worship. Sunflower Renaissance. Worship is all-encompassing. Like wind through aspen, while passing, it stays. We are its yesterdays, bowing our heads in its breeze. Our lot the earth, we feared the grass, our faces arcing as warm golden graces, forever distant past. Following his path, we await the dawning, keeping the faith in the mellowness of yellow days. For in the fall, oh, we are falling to be swallowed by fallow ground and new generations, while Lord of our light continues still his daily round. But still, devoutly bronzed and burning, heedless of the plague of days, when brown stems ashen and curl into thin clay, when time's grasp unclasps like swift wings, need we not notice these weeds we've become, nor gazing inward with wide wonder, notice this primal beauty at last, ourselves? And now if you would just bear with me on this one's called Bear Puzzle. What to do with the nose of a Bruin that can trace a set of cantaloupe to the moon? And so at a point in time when the voices of its appetite cry out their loudest, all the summer cabins full of aromatic snacking laid out in bowls behind flimsy screens, all the doors open for cooling to let in the cat whose dish sits wafting in a breeze, all the wet garbage overflowing, ripe as fruit in the still Mediterranean air. Where is the mediation of Goldilocks when we need her? And so screens are obliterated, doors smashed, wet garbage gobbled in orgiastic frenzy. People are terrified, so bears are put to sleep. But somewhere, there is a colorful celluloid bear whose zany antics amuse you. Somewhere, there is a concrete bear that at the push of a button welcomes you. Chainsaw bears carved of cedar wearing backwards ball caps, grinning, waving in friendliness. Yet somewhere, there's a lovely green forest with swollen streams and salmon where bears actually fit. But it is found in a box on a table. It is flat and very thin, and so many dark and random lines delineate the pieces. I'd just like to read just a couple of short ones left. I was an actor in the Bracebridge dinner that was held in the Iwani Hotel every Christmas until COVID. It hasn't been acted since. I was one of the forest folk, and every Christmas I looked forward to it. So we had downtime, lots of downtime for our performance. And we had 2 entrances and lots of downtime. So I began to write poems using the artifacts, the pageantry, the music, the food, the smells, the aromas, so that anybody who had not been able to attend the Bracebridge feast would be able to read the poems and maybe begin to realize some of the feelings that they evoked. This is called Fragile Brown Bison. Shaggy brown bison of the plains, grown tiny and browse now, unmolested these barley and corn carpets in warm pools of afternoon light. Window leads and frames create shadow fences that cannot hold them. These wondrous creatures whose small hearts beat with cold dreams of the wild. I watch where men walk upon this woven earth. Nobody else seems aware of stampeding herds avoiding casual feet, nor of such peaceful regatherings afterward. Fragile and precious, these brown bison of the plains, warm as fire, rough as bark, now content to graze this woven world of native motif, no spear nor arrow to kill their quiet brows. And then finally, again, a poem of the Bracebridge. This one is called Viola da Gamba. A viola da gamba, of course, is more like a guitar. It's got frets, but it's held between the legs and bowed. Viola da gamba, frets and gut and horsehair bow, big box of sound, woman-shaped. Left hand fingers curved over notes, anxious nursemaids minding their cribs, right hand pushing and pulling to ring each bright and singing string. You need fire in the sound, and tempest. You need gentleness and harmony as well. As if ladies in quattrocento hats, richly brocaded, sing to apricot flames in place. On the contrabasso spectrum of sounds, you need voices of apple-cheeked men puffing meerschaum pipes with bowls carved in likeness of laughing Dionysus. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Oh my gosh, Dan, what a treat. Thank you so much. I'd like to invite everyone to unmute so you can applaud and call out any wonderful responses that you have. We have some great responses in the chat too.
Beautiful
Yay.
work.
Great reading. Beautiful reading, Dan.
Dan, that was fantastic. I like your work and your presentation very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it really brought me back to time spent in that part of the state.
Ah.
Makes me want to get in the car right now.
Well, great. I'm glad to hear that everyone enjoyed those.
Dan, yeah, I want to thank you, Dan. I can't get you an image, so I can't smile at you. I did just applaud for you, but yeah, it's a great part of the world. I think I even know somebody who used to live in your house, so we'll take it from there. They want Mr. Ice and his family.
Uh-huh.
So, in any event, thank you so much. That was wonderful.
Well, you were a wonderful audience, every one of you, and I just really appreciate being able to bring these things out after so long and be able to share them. Thank you so much. And thank you, Steve and Diane and Deborah, for all the work that they do for poetry as well.
Will those all be included in the new volume coming out, Dan?
I'm sorry?
Will those be included in the new collection coming out, or is it going to be all new poems?
Yes, some of them will be. I don't know whether to call that collection Brief History of the Mother Lode or to call it Cold Ceremonial, but it'll be called one of those probably. And there will be samples. The Williams sampler kind of takes its feeling from a Whitman sampler. You know, in fact, the cover of it is like a box of chocolates, and you kind of decide which one you might want to try. And so that's what the Williams sampler is going to be like, with a number of poems from Yosemite being included, as well as others.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
Okay, Forrest.
Yeah, that occurred to me as I was saying it. Forrest Gump. Yeah, life is like a box of chocolate. And I guess maybe a poetry book is too, to a certain extent.
It is. Maybe you need to make it Bracebridge Tales.
Uh-huh, yeah. Well, I thought that might be a nice chapbook. It's about 30 some odd poems. I thought that would probably be a good fit for it. And then I've got some beautiful, well, for instance, I don't know if you can see this or not. Let me hold it up. This was the original menu of the Bracebridge. It shows some of the costuming, some of the sets in the background.
Back off with it.
Everybody got a copy of this.
Dan, we can see it better if you back off.
Okay.
Yeah, don't get close to the camera, then we can't see it. That's too far.
Does that work?
Background's blurred. We can't
No.
see.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think it's because of your background being on. It
There
makes
it
it
is.
hard
There
to
it is.
look
That's a nice
Yeah,
one.
the background makes it blurry.
Well, that's better.
That's a nice one there. Shows the costuming and some of
Yeah,
the.
there you go.
There we go.
Oh, there you
Oh,
go.
yeah.
Got it.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Wow. Do you bring it back now that the pandemic is sort of settling down?
Well, it depends on a number of things. Whether or not the concessionaire wants to continue with it. There's a group of people, there was a lady who had a singing group that come up from the Bay Area, and they would do all of the music. And she was like the housekeeper to the Lord and Lady Bracebridge, and Ansel Adams and Virginia Adams were the first Lord and Lady Bracebridge in 1929. And then Ansel Adams loved to be a jester. He loved to be that kind of a guy, and he was very faithful in his comedy and everything. And so that continued on like that. But I always enjoyed that. It was like 6 days, 4-hour performances each day. And we would all get together and we kind of recognized each other in our costumes, whereas we didn't hardly know each other when we got into our civilian clothes, you know.
That's wonderful. I do hope it comes back. And what a feast of words you have prepared for us tonight. The presentation was just beautiful. I'm so glad that your internet held up too. We could hear you and see you perfectly all the way through.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think it's really true that you have given a voice to the park, to this place, the very special place, and your reverence for it comes across in every word.
Oh, thank you. That's wonderful. Wonderful. Well, I can't hardly wait to hear what everybody else has got to share tonight.
Well, if there are no more comments, I'm going to invite you to access the chat, which I know that Steve is going to save for us. And Dan, especially, you should take a minute to read all the beautiful lines that were highlighted in the chat. And we'll be, great. We'll be stopping our recording in just a moment. The those of you in the Zoom room, please stay online if you'd like to take part in the open mic. And thanks to all of our YouTube listeners. We invite you to tune in for our next regular Coastside Poetry event, which is Tuesday, November 12th. And we'll welcome San Mateo County Poet Laureate Emerita, Lisa Rosenberg. So thanks again so much for joining us at Coastside Poetry and for helping us to keep the lamps of poetry burning. So we'll